Hey, what's up everyone? It's been a while since I've done a video on my Q1. I've done some recently on my son's, which I just refurbished, so to speak, and gave it a different look. But then I started working on mine, and there were a few things I did. The main thing, I was looking for a new controller, a non-Qiewa controller, because the Qiewa controllers, especially the new ones for these Q1s, just don't perform very well. And this motor on the Q1 is an 800 watt motor, and it's capable of so much more than what that Qiewa controller is letting it do. So I'll get to that in a little bit, but first, to start with, I wanted to just go over the things I've done to my scooter to get to this point. Start off with, obviously I've changed the look of it drastically. I've used this graffiti style grip tape on the deck. Ran it up the fender there, and also on the sides, even down on the kickstand. The stuff sticks really good, obviously, to be staying on the kickstand. I've had this stuff on here about 2 years probably by now, and very durable. Cleans off fairly easy. I mean, you could hose it off if you want. I normally just blow it. We get a lot of dust out here in the desert. And so I've got that on the deck, the sides, up on the fender, and then coming up the steering stem a little bit there. Also, I obviously painted the wheels and the shocks, and that little piece on front where the shocks mount on there, the springs there also, and with red paint. I originally had purple on there. It's kind of a darker purple. Looked good at first, but then as it got dirty, it just kind of looked like a dingy black dirty look. So I wanted to redo the wheels. I did that recently, and went with the red. And the red on springs. I think that came out pretty good. So those are the two main things, changing the looks. Got a few odd stickers here and there. Just kind of giving it that overall kind of graffiti look to it. So those are the main changes I did just for the looks of the scooter. Okay, so now let's look at some of the physical things I actually did to the scooter. Starting out with the rear fender. These Q1 fenders are notorious for cracking down the middle, breaking, and having the fender come off due to fatigue, metal fatigue during vibration. What I did, I would do this with any of these if you want your fender to last and not give you any problems. Here's the original fender bracket that they have on the Q1, and this goes down here. It would be on obviously on the back side of the fender, but you can see where it would go to. So there's the two holes for it, the original holes, and so your fender bracket would line up there. Now you can see the width of this, and the height of it only comes up to here, but then you have this much more room of straight metal before you get to that bend. So that would make this vibrate a lot right at this edge where the bracket meets the fender, which isn't a good place. At this corner would be much better. So it'd be better to extend this bracket all the way up to the corner there to where it bends. So I did that, but beyond that, I got a much bigger piece of steel bar. I got this down at Home Depot. You can get it at any hardware store probably. And you can see it's twice the width of the original bracket. Same diameter. If you look at the ends, it's the same diameter, so it's pretty thick. And basically I formed a new bracket, mounted it on back here. So with this new bracket, it's much wider, obviously, which gives you a lot more coverage for the stress, and I extended it so it goes up to this first bend in the metal. So basically it's coming up this high. Now you can see that's a much better bracket. It's going to be much more sturdy. Beyond that, in between, here's where I mounted it up underneath there on the back side. You can get a better look at it. There you go. So you can see here's my new bracket. It basically takes up all this room from here over to here. I barely had enough room to run an LED strip on the sides too. And the top of it goes all the way up to that first bend in the metal. In addition, I put some larger washers here to give it more surface area for the vibration and such. And then I put a third bolt up in on top as well. And beyond that, in between the bracket and the fender, when I put it back up on there, I used this stuff here called shoe goo. I use this for sealing anything on the scooter. This is great stuff. and it's not very runny. It's kind of thick, so you can put it on a vertical surface and it doesn't drip down too much. Works really well. So I put a layer of this between the bracket and the fender before I mounted it in and put the hardware back in. So there's a nice, basically this is kind of like a hard rubber. It turns to when it dries. So there's a hard rubber layer between this, actually kind of like, in addition to these bowls, gluing it to the back of the fender. And that thing goes nowhere. That thing's rock solid. Another thing, while I was doing that, I raised up the fender level. So this is higher up than your stock Q1. And one of the reasons why I did that was so I could run these LED strips I got going up underneath the fender. I wanted the fender to sit up higher so the light would have more chance to spread out going down to the ground and on the back wheel there. I also have a back LED strip here that I originally had as my brake light, but now it's I changed it to just be a tail light. I value a tail light more than a brake light. That's my rear fender. Front fender, I had removed the tire one day to change the tire, remove the wheel. I just decided to leave the front fender off because I like the look of it without it, and you know, I don't ride in water or anything, rain or anything like that, so you know, I don't have to worry about stuff flying up. Okay, another thing I did, which is very simple to do but makes this life so much easier if you're taking the lids off of these things, which I do a lot, as you might imagine. I made a rubber gasket to go in between the deck and the chassis, and you can kind of see the little bit of blue there. The gasket's blue. And I did that so I didn't have to keep sealing the deck with some kind of sealant and then prying it open, you know, dealing with that, trying to take the lid off again. So I just got a nice rubber gasket I cut to fit the chassis, put the lid on top, put the screws in, and that seals the deck to the chassis without any problems. Easy to take it apart, don't have to worry about messing with glue or sealant or anything, and easy to put back together. Okay, I strengthened the front steering stem basically by first adjusting the handlebars to where I want them. I'm the only one who rides the scooter, so I don't move the handlebars up and down. So I have them in the position where I want them. And one tip on that, I would recommend that you set your handlebars to the lowest height that you're comfortable with. And the reason for that is the lower the handlebars are, the more of the bar goes down into the stem here. So if you got the handlebars raised up all the way, the end of this bar is literally about right here. So you've got that much bar inside the stem. And as you could imagine, you know, the more bar you have in the stem, the more sturdy, the more stronger the handlebars are going to be, the stem's going to be. That's so basically I've dropped mine to where I'm comfortable with it. I originally had it at the highest setting. I think I'm in the second highest setting now, and it's more stable there. I like the feeling of it better, and so that's where I want it. Okay, so once I had it like that, I straightened out the you know, the wheel, made sure I was aligned with the handlebars, and I put in 2 sheet metal screws. I drilled straight through this plastic top part. Well, I don't know if that's plastic. That's probably metal or aluminum too. Into the stem, and then put that sheet metal screw into that. So that's also holding the stem. I did another one sideways through this part here. There's a hole there normally in this locking mechanism. So I drilled a hole through that, going in sideways into the groove, put another sheet metal screw in that way. So I have one going in sideways, one going in forwards, plus the locking mechanism, and then this is kind of holding it a little bit too. But those 2 sheet metal screws, that really locks this thing down tight. I used the red Loctite on them as well, so they shouldn't come loose. If they should, then you can just tighten them a little bit again. And that makes this, that really solids up the front end, the steering stem. Okay, I also added some accessories, as you see, a good quality mirror, which I highly recommend to everybody, so you don't have to turn back looking, just glance down in a mirror. This is a good quality, high quality mountain bike one. Thing's only like 20 bucks on Amazon, but it stays put. It doesn't vibrate and move around. It's really tight, but you can still move it, but I never had a problem with it moving on its own. Like that one a lot. Got them on all our scooters. Same one on my son's. I painted his, but same mirror. And also then I have this 3-liter bag. This is a pretty popular brand, Wildman. I've seen it a lot in videos and such. And I found that on Amazon. They have different sizes. This is the 3-liter or 3L. It's a little bit bigger than the other one they sell. And I would recommend this for a Q1. It fits on there nicely. It gives you a lot of storage space inside. When we're riding like out in the forest and stuff, I carry extra controllers and throttles in this bag with me so I can repair the scooter if I need to, when I'm 4 or 5 miles out into the forest somewhere. So that's a good bag to have. Also, I added this. This is just a bar extender, I guess you call it, for mountain bike. Mounted it straight through the handlebar here. This, in between the folding mechanisms, this square part of the handlebar is just, it's hollow, so you can just easily drill through it. Put a couple bolts into this thing, bolted it on there. Have it painted purple. That was my original color, my rims and such, but I'll probably be painting this red here pretty soon. And then I also have a nice aluminum phone mount on this bar here to hold my phone, which I have a GPS app on I use. I don't know how well you can see that there, but this is for my speedometer and mileage. I can rate both my speedometer and mileage with this app, and it's GPS, so it's accurate. It's any scooter display with miles per hour, it's not going to be accurate. Just get a GPS app if you really want to know how fast you're going. So that's what I use, and also you can record tracks and stuff with this, so it shows you the different how long you went, where you went, little maps and such. So it's a good app. We've got our throttle, and I'll get to this a little bit more. You'll notice it's not the Qiewa throttle I have on here anymore, but I'll get to that in a minute. And then also I have a lock down here. This is a good lock. I like it. Mounts around the stem like that. The lock folds up, goes on there, locks in place. It doesn't really rattle around much. Okay, now also this leads to something that I just made, and that's this accessory bar down here. And it just consists of a piece of conduit and a piece of steel bar, a 1/8 inch, so it's bendable to some degree. If you use your strength, you can basically form it around the stem, which is what I did, and then just flared out the ends with in a vise, drilled some holes through that, and mounted it on there, painted it black. Works really well. I got that idea from the Q Power. It has the exact same thing on it, so I just made my own. This one on my son's is actually from a Q Power, so this is the stock Q Power one. So I just took the measurements from that and went down to Home Depot, bought this stuff. I bought a 3/4 inch by 5 foot. Now obviously I didn't need 5 feet of this stuff, but that's the smallest I could find. And I paid maybe $5 or $6 for that. And then this flat bar, 1/8 inch thickness, 3/4 wide, which is the same as what they used on the stock one for the Q Power, so that's why I got it. So it's not too hard to do. Pretty easy. All in all, costs less than 20 bucks to make this accessory bar here. Okay, next you'll notice I totally did away with the stock Q1 lights and horn module, and so now I did it also on my son's. I also now have these new headlights. These are really good. It's got the kind of like they call it angel eye or whatever, the outer ring, which turns purple, kind of a purplish blue, and then the headlight, which they look very strange, but what that pattern does, it throws the light pattern down on the ground very wide, almost like 2 lanes of traffic. It's almost like a car headlight. But the great thing about these is if you're down the road from this looking at it, it's not blinding at all. It's really weird how that works, but it gives off good wide pattern where you can see where you're going, and it doesn't blind oncoming drivers. So I like those a lot. Over here I just have a battery operated secondary light that I have shining down closer in front of the scooter. So this is more of my distance lighting, and this is my closer up lighting. This one will blind people, so that's why I'm using it pointed down more direction towards the road so it doesn't blind people, but mainly I'm lighting up closer in front of me where this one's lighting up further down the road. I also have a camera mount on here for GoPro or Action Cam. Another thing I've done is I removed the alarm module from the scooter. The main reason I did that is the alarm module, whether the scooter's turned on or not, this is always powered up and it's pulling voltage from your battery. I measured about a 1/2 volt per day just letting the scooter sit there, that this was taking out of the battery. So I want to prevent that, and I didn't use the alarm that much anyway, so I just removed it from the scooter. Now basically the alarm does 2 things. It triggers a sound if somebody moves it when it's alarmed, and it also kills power to the scooter. So basically what I did is I still wanted to kill power the scooter, so I put in a kill switch right here. When it's backwards, you can't turn the scooter on, so this has to be flipped forwards for the scooter to be powered up. So if I want to, I can come back here, throw the kill switch, and then somebody can't just jump on and turn on the scooter. Now if I still wanted to use the alarm, which occasionally I will, I put a little pigtail coming out of my wiring here, or I can plug the alarm on here. Then I'll just set the alarm module somewhere like up there under my tire, right there, and then arm it, and it's set to go now. Another thing too about having this alarm outside the chassis is so much louder. When it's in the chassis, it's kind of muffled. Out here it's really loud, so now if somebody came up and just touched the scooter a little bit. So I still have my alarm if I want to use it. I kill my power down here with the kill switch, and that's basically doing what the stock alarm module installed in the scooter does. But with the advantage of being able to unplug this so it doesn't pull voltage from my battery on a daily basis. Okay, so now as far as electrical stuff goes, the first thing I did this a while ago, I replaced the stock 48 volt 26 amp hour battery. That's the stock Q1 battery. I replaced this with a 52 volt 28 amp hour battery, so it's got a couple more amp hour capacity, which isn't a big deal. The big deal is it's 52 volt nominal instead of 48 volt. That extra 4 volts gives you a little bit more, gives you about 3 more miles per hour in speed and a little bit more power, and that's the main reason why I did it. So I had a battery custom made from a shop in China. And actually, due to the technology in batteries, between when this was made and when my new one was made, the battery cells, the LiPo battery cells, can hold more capacity these days. So they were able to do the 52 volt 28 amp hour battery. It was actually ended up being a couple inches smaller, only came out to maybe here, and not quite as tall either. So it looks smaller, but it's actually more voltage and a little bit more capacity. So that's just battery technology improving, which it's going to continue to do. So that's one thing. The 52 volt battery gave me more miles per hour, 3 more miles per hour, and better power, so that was a good upgrade to do. Okay, next that brings us to the controller. Now these Qiewa controllers, the original older ones they had that hardly anybody would have anymore at this point, were pretty good. I had no problem with the controllers. They had good acceleration, good power. And they did all right. I was happy with this controller. Then they switched to these new controllers, which probably most of everybody has these days. And it's got the black plastic end cap with where the wires come out, and the label on the other side here, stating it's a 25 amp controller. I kind of suspect it's really not 25 amps even. These controllers are very lackluster, very low acceleration, slow to accelerate, not good climbing hills. And to me, it's just a poor choice for a controller for this motor. These motors are 800 watts on the Q1, and it's capable of far more power than what this controller is letting it do. So this is limiting the performance of the scooter. So I tried, basically, first I ended up modifying with what I call the torque mod. I did this to the newer controllers, and it helped tremendously. It made it much more reasonable, but it still had low end torque, or no low end torque. So once you got going up to like 10-12 miles per hour, then it would start accelerating better, and was pretty good after that. Actually much better than this is stock. So that modification made a big difference. But still, like, I'd be sitting at an intersection or something waiting to cross traffic, and the light would turn green, and I hit the throttle, and it just takes off slow, and I didn't like that. I want having more acceleration on hand when I need it. So I've been looking for new controllers for a while, and basically what I did, I decided to just go out and buy some. And basically what I found was a controller this size, which is the size that has to fit in the Q1. If the controller's any bigger than this, it's not going to fit. Due to that big battery in there and the wiring jammed in there, you just don't have a lot of space. So I was looking for something the same size as this Qiewa that would fit in the scooter and give me more power. I found one in China that I put into my son's, and it's a good controller, but it still didn't have the power that I wanted. It's good, by no means, don't get me wrong. It was as good as the original Qiewa controller, better than the new Qiewa controller. And that's why I ended up putting in my son's scooter, because he doesn't really need any more acceleration. That has a different type of display, different type of throttle, and it's just a whole new setup. Works good, he likes it, so that's what I got in his. But I wanted something with even more power. I figured as long as I'm doing this, I want to find something that's just going to be like, wow, this is it. So I started off, I bought this controller here. As you can see, it's a monster compared to this other one here. And I didn't care about anything other than making the motor run, so I could test it to see how the performance is. I figured after that, I'll figure out the lights and brakes and everything else. So I bought this one and got it working. Problem with this one is, at the high end, it would stutter. I'd be accelerating, and right before I got to the top end, it would do like a stutter like that. Didn't like it, so I'm like, okay, there's got to be something better than that. But to make that work, it won't work. I couldn't use the Qiewa throttle, so I had to go out and buy some standard throttles that work with any of these generic controllers like this. First, I got this twist throttle one. Had a locking key on it. I figured that's pretty cool. I want to try twist throttle. Ended up not liking it because you got to hold your. I don't like to use cruise control, so I'm constantly holding this in a certain position, which seemed not as comfortable as just using a thumb throttle. And then a couple times getting off the scooter, I accidentally, holding the handle, did that, and the scooter would jump. So I figured, yeah, I'm going back to thumb throttle. So that's when I found these. This is only like 14 bucks on Amazon, and basically on-off switch, throttle, and this is simply a voltmeter, and that's all you really need. So anyway, I bought this throttle to use with these various controllers. And that's, of course, what I have on my scooter now, that same throttle. Okay, as far as controllers go, got this one to work. I mean, just running the scooter. So I'm like, oh, I'll keep looking. Found this one, which is smaller than that one. I think this one had like, I don't know, 18 MOSFETs or something. These have 12. This one is rated at 38 amp. This one's rated at 26 to 32 or to 30 amp, and this one worked really good, but I wasn't impressed with the top end speed. It didn't let me go as fast as I wanted to, but the acceleration and torque was really good on it. So I'm like, okay, that's progress anyway. Then I ended up finding this one. This is the one I ended up using. This is a great controller. It's perfect for the scooter. I tested it in a different 48 volt Q1, worked great. Put in my 52 volt Q1, and the thing's just awesome. It has great acceleration, awesome hill climbing ability, faster top end, and rated 26 to 33 amps. And I got to believe it's running with this 800 watt motor. It's running probably that 33 amps or very close to it. So you can see with the 25 amp limit on the Qiewa controller, this thing the motor wants more current, and it'll do more performance with that current. Now, kind of just quick thing on that, the current of the controller, some people get confused. That's not what the current is going to the motor. This just simply means with this controller, this will put out up to 38 amps, but the motor is actually controlling the current. The motor will ask for current, and this controller will pass it on to it. So you could have a 38 amp controller, you could have a 25 amp controller. It doesn't matter. If the motor wants 30 amps, it's going to get 30 amps. You could put a 100 amp controller in there, and if the motor's only asking for 30 amps, it's only going to get 30 amps. So you're not going to blow up your motor by putting in a controller rated for a higher current level. It's just giving you the ability to have your motor get more current if it wants it. So that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking the Q1, that 800 watt motor, can pull up to like 33 amps maybe. And this is limiting it to 25 amps, so therefore you're limiting your performance. Okay, so I love this controller. As you can see with these controllers, they're kind of generic. They're made for e-bikes, golf carts, electric motorcycles, whatever. They can go in just about anything. And there's a ton of wires on it. Good thing with this controller, they're all labeled, both Chinese and English. Some of the descriptions are a little hard to figure out, but I figured out what I needed for this Q1 and basically got it down to this. I cut off all the wires I didn't need, and you can see there's a ton of them there. And basically it just comes down to this is all you need for the Q1. I'm not going to go over the wiring or anything of that right here, right now. But this is a great controller. Again, very good torque, very good hill climbing ability, very good acceleration, nice top end. I think in the stock Q1 I was able to hit 35 with it, with just great acceleration. This controller is what this scooter really wants. The drawback to this is it's still bigger. still bigger than the Qiewa controller, so you have to figure out a way creatively how to mount it to your scooter. One thing you could do, probably if you have the stock battery, you could mount it in a bag or something like this, and then you'd have to extend the relevant wiring down into your chassis. Could be done. Another thing you could do, when I was testing this in the Q1 to begin with the stock 48 volt battery, I just had the deck off and I had my wires wired into it and just had this kind of leaning out the back like that. Now it was only sticking up, when it's down the chassis, it's only sticking up a couple inches. So I was thinking, like, well, I could also just notch out a hole there in the back of the deck and have the chassis, or have the chassis of the controller sticking out a couple inches there. It'd actually be like a footrest or something. So that would be another option you could do. For me, since my battery, my 52 volt battery is shorter than the stock 48 volt battery, I actually had enough room where I could cut a hole in the back of the chassis, and the controller is actually sticking out through the back of the chassis a little bit, and I had enough clearance where it's not interfering with my suspension at all down there. So that's good. I checked with the stock 48 volt battery, this would stick out a couple inches more, and you wouldn't have room to do this with the stock 48 volt battery. You wouldn't have room for your suspension to flex. But with my 52 volt battery, I could do that, and you can see there it sticks out just that much. So it fits in nicely when I have that 52 volt battery. But again, you could have it sticking out the back here or in a bag down and run the wires. But this is an incredibly good controller. I'm happy with it. I painted the back a little bit black on top and red on the back. Okay, so once I had that installed and tested the heck out of it, just riding it, and liked it, then I figured out the rest of the wiring that I needed to run my lights. Also there's a good brake, electronic braking on these new controllers is incredibly good. I find that it's so good that when I put on my brakes, I'm barely using my brake pads. The motor's doing most of the slowing down. That's another benefit of this controller. It's got insanely good electronic braking. So that's going to save my brake pads, and you can just feel it winding down when you hit the brakes, and it's the motor slowing you down. So I figured that out, the brake sense connection, light connections, whatever else I needed. Got everything sealed in there. Again, when I put that controller through the back panel there, used shoe glue to seal the edges, and then just painted over that. So that's sealed in there good. That's tight. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to bounce around. So let's take a quick look at the throttle and display. Let me turn on my kill switch down here. Now I can turn it on with this switch here. And you can see it just shows my voltage, 57.5 volts. I'm fully charged. My 52 volt battery is like 58.6. So this is almost fully charged right now. I like having that voltmeter right there, and it would be good to go now if I hit the throttle. Again, I use my app for speedometer and for my mileage, so I really don't have any need for any other type of display on this. I'll show you the lighting a little bit later, but basically I did a little bit of modification to my light switch here. You'll notice I have two red switches there, and that's because I got rid of my horn, which is just a momentary push button. And the reason why is this light has two connections, one for the outer ring and one for the light itself, and I wanted them hooked separate so I could turn off the headlight and still have the outer ring on. So for example, this bottom one, if I turn it on, that's my headlight, and that's the only thing that switch is controlling, is just that headlight there. I'll show you the lights a little bit more later after it gets dark too. Okay, this other switch here is all my secondary lighting, so if I turn that on, first of all, I get the purple ring in the headlight, and also my tail light comes on. I also put a 3 LED strip, red LED strip, on the back fender bracket here, shining on this controller. So at nighttime it lights up the rear of this controller with a red. And then also I have these LED RGB strips under the fender, the rear fender here. And then as well, you'll notice I took off the standard strips that were on the side, light strips, and I ran RGB strips, but I ran it up underneath the lip here, so you can't see them, but they're shining down along the side of the scooter. There they are. And at night that lights up the side of the scooter as well as the ground around it. So with those two switches I can have my headlight on or off, and then like if I'm just parked eating a burger somewhere or something, I can have all the other lights on without having the headlight on as well. Okay, I do have some additional auxiliary lighting on the front here. I got 4 bright white strips, 2 on either side, and I control that with a secondary switch down here next to my kill switch. That's what this other switch is in front of the kill switch. It's to power on these front lights. They're quite bright at night and they light up just right around the front of the scooter, and it makes it, for daytime riding, it makes it really easier to be seen from the front as well. They're pretty bright. One thing about these lights that I'm running here, the secondary lights, the RGB strips, and also the red LED strip I got shining on the controller and my tail light as well. They all run off 12 volts DC, which is normally not present in the scooter. So I'm getting around that by using a high voltage DC to 12 volt step down converter. Voltage of the battery in a stock Qiewa is going to be anywhere from like 41 up to 54.6 volts. So you need a converter that will take in that voltage range and output a steady 12 volts. And those are pretty cheap. I got that for like, $12-15 on Amazon as well. And that's how you can get 12 volts into the chassis of the scooter to run lights or different accessories. Alright, so next I'll show you the lights after it gets darker. And just one final comment on this controller. I like this thing so much, I have 3 of these. I went out and bought 2 more, so I have some spares. Yeah, that's how much I like these. It really lets the motor do what it's intended to do, and it doesn't limit it in any way, so you get the full performance of your motor. Okay, so it's a little darker now, so I just want to show you lights real quick. There's the headlight, which is the outer ring lit up, and the rest of my accessory lights. These RGB lights that you see changing colors here, which I have run all along the sides of the scooter up underneath the lip there, as I mentioned. And you can see it's lighting up the whole side of the scooter and the ground beneath. And that same strip goes up under the fender there. Those are all controlled by, it comes with either a handheld remote. Also has an app attachment to it, so you can control it either way. In the app you can do some other different things with it, such as there's a good strobe one like that. It kind of looks like an airplane strobe, and you can increase the speed of it or slow it down, change the brightness, etc. And goes through all different colors: purple strobe, blue, yellow, whatever you want. And there's some other modes here on this app. It's pretty cool. And beyond that, you can again control it just with this remote control, handheld remote control as well. Again, there's those 3 LEDs I've got lighting the back controller, and you can see that looks pretty good there, lit up with the red there. That kind of acts like another running light. My tail light on the back end, so this is what kind of looks like from behind. And then let's take a look at the headlights now. Okay, so this is kind of the view riding on the scooter with the headlights on. And it's not completely dark now, but dark enough to see what we're doing here. And you can see the smaller one on the left here with the battery operated one, I've got pointing more straight down, so it's kind of just right out in front there. And then my headlight, farther distance headlight, is the one with that super wide pattern out there. So you can see that's a nice wide beam there. It's bright. I love that headlight. It gives you all the light you need, and then I got that other one closer up. Now let's go ahead and turn on my other front lights here with this other switch. And there's those strips on the front, lighting up even more down in front here. So let's take a look at what it looks like standing back if you were approaching. And you can see even at this point, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but the smaller light that I have just pointing lower to the ground there is actually brighter to me than the headlight, which is the bigger, wider beam. So that works pretty good. Actually, it's really good that way. With that other one pointing down, it's really not blinding at all. And then you can see the bottom running lights there too. And that's about it for now, guys. So maybe doing some riding videos upcoming soon. We're going up camping here again a little bit. I'm hoping to maybe get some footage up there. And until next time, guys, take care. Peace.